fantasy football wide receiver tier list. Today we want to jump into coming to you like with you guys from perspective of like dynasty and the value of a receiver. All right. So this isn't a list that's going to be like, oh, you should draft this person at this stage. This is a list that tells you that you are going to be getting a certain amount of value out of a receiver based off of what Sam and I believe their talent to be. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to share the screen, we're going to pull up the tier list, and we're going to dive in. We're going to give you guys a top 40 with a few honorable mentions and some people that we're just leaving out because we don't view them as being in the top 50, really. You can argue some of them might creep in there and some might not. And I can tell you now that this doesn't have every single wide receiver in the league. I'm sure there's some that you guys might be targeting that aren't on this list. But this is going to be a solid, cohesive list for you guys to judge whether or not you're getting solid value. So one thing I want to emphasize as I share my screen here is this is based off of Dynasty. All right. So why I say that is because someone like Tyreek Hill, who is a stud, we're not putting him in S tier because he's older. All right. So you're taking Tyreek Hill with the knowledge that maybe you have 2-3 years left of really, really good play because he's 30. Right? So we're taking that into account. That's literally the reason he's not in S tier. We know Tyreek Hill is a stud and he performs every single year in fantasy. We're not worried about that. As long as he's healthy, he's going to go. But we're also thinking longevity. So you're going to see some receivers in different levels where you go, wow, why are they a C tier? And the issue is because maybe they're an aging vet. All right? So that value that, yes, they may perform to you, if this was a redraft league, this list would shift around tremendously. But we're coming in here with the dynasty perspective. So let's go ahead and jump in. And while I pull this up, Sam, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, and this isn't just an ADP list either. Obviously, Kyle and I have a few players that we like ahead of ADP or below ADP. So this is just showing who the players we think are the most valuable for your dynasty teams are. And we'll call out a few of the people who we think are good value for where they're currently going as well.
Yeah, and we'll justify some of this as well as we go through this. We definitely think that there are certain players that stand out above the rest, which is why we tier them out as we do. Where is Amon Ra? There he is. So starting here, we're going to order this a little bit of how we also view from the left to right, how we view someone as more valuable than the rest. We wanted to do this as balanced as we can. We see some players as being maybe a low end A versus a high end A when it comes down to it, just based off of talent. So we're starting here. We're taking a look, and these are the S tier wide receivers that we came up with. The only one that I think is arguably debatable is AJ Brown. He's a little older than the other players. He's been in the league a little bit longer, but I pushed for it. Sam didn't want him in the S tier. He thought he would be a high end A. I disagree. I think AJ Brown is an absolute stud, and he's a monster and has been since he came into this league. And I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. Last year, first 8 games of the year, he was wide receiver 1 or 2 based on performance, and then he had to fall off alongside the rest of the Eagles roster when the Eagles decided to just not win a game pretty much for the rest of the season. So everyone suffered at that point, but I think what you saw in that first half of the season is really what AJ Brown is capable of. Anytime a receiver is going to lose their QB, you're going to see a fall off. A good example here is the other person in the S tier, which is Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Each of them have struggled a little bit with their quarterbacks gone. And that's really my point here. A.J. Brown, I think, is a monster steal no matter how you spin it. And there's a reason he's going either late first, which in normal leagues. In dynasty leagues, you'll see him usually in the second, early second rounds is what you see him going as. So yeah, that's my reasoning. Anything else there you want to add, Sam? Or
Yeah,
anything
no,
else you want to add to this tier?
the one thing I'll say, the one guy I really like here in terms of value is Amon Ra St. Brown. He goes mid round, depending on super flex or one QB. I think he could end up being what CeeDee Lamb was last year. Draft in the middle of that first round in your most of your dynasty drafts here. But now that Jameson Williams is there to kind of take off top a little bit more, apparently he's improved. I think we could even see an increase in production there, and I wouldn't be
Yep.
shocked if he's like a league winner this year for a lot of people.
Yeah, Amon Ra he's just a really, really good player. And if you watched our Woper video, I believe he's in there. And his stats on the RACR are tremendous. He's just a really, really good receiver, and I think if Goff shows up as we saw him, he's going to be a really big steal. There's a reason why he's going in the first, generally. Like those first four there next to A.J. Brown are the ones that are usually, if they're taken, they're going in the first round, alongside the rest of the round being quarterbacks, if you're in a super flex league. So no matter what, you're going to get value with these five. You know they're going to perform. There's no doubt about it. And these next handful, I'm going to break up the A tier just a little bit so we can give some explanations. We're not going to get too heavy because there's over 40 receivers here that we're going through, and if we gave a reasoning for everyone, we'd be here all day. But the first one I want to touch on before I even get into anybody else is Garrett Wilson. Some people may argue with us that he should be an S tier. Garrett Wilson's a stud. I don't think he's in the S tier yet. I need to see what he does this year with Aaron Rodgers at the helm at the quarterback that is functioning somewhat compared to everyone else he's had at the quarterback position. So Garrett Wilson, I expect to have a really good year. I think he falls right where he's supposed to be, sitting there at the high end A. And he'll be sitting right next to our boy Puka, who is, I believe, right next to Garrett in terms of potential talent. I just think Wilson has more upside.
Yeah, and I think both these guys could potentially move into S next year, but I think we need to see Puka do it again, or at least have another monster year. And Wilson, obviously, unlike some of these other guys, hasn't had that monster season yet. Obviously, not really his fault. It's a lot of the New York Jets QB play and front office issues, but he could definitely move up next year.
Yeah, I'm loading up a few of these other guys. Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, he's being like spoken about as like the next biggest thing in terms of like wide receivers, rightfully so. We have him here sitting at 3 because yes, he's A tier already, even though he's a rookie, but at the same time, we have him sitting 3rd because you need to see something at an NFL level. You really do before you see something giving someone like too much credit and moving them up. A few of these people are going to be self-explanatory as we go through this. Nico Collins, Devontae Smith, we see as A tier. Devontae Smith is A tier because we believe if he's on any team that is in need of a wide receiver 1, that is exactly what he would be. And he's also at a state in his first 2 seasons where he's performed at 1,000 yards each year, despite everything else that's going on around him.
Yeah, I think the other one that might get some questions is DJ Moore, because his ADP has him going in like the 4th round, late 3rd, depending on kind of like league format there. Mm-hmm. But he just finished as the wide receiver 6 with Justin Fields throwing him the ball. Obviously, there's a little bit more competition, but all the reports out of camp is he's the clear number 1 on the Bears offense. And I think it's going to be Odunze and Keenan Allen that fight for that, the second and third largest target shares there. So I think with an improvement in QB play, like he might not finish top 6 again, but he could definitely push for top 10, top 15 this year at the position.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like DJ Moore a lot. I think he's in a better situation. It's just he's got that rookie quarterback that we need to see how that's going to pan out for him at this point. Yes, he had Justin Fields throwing to him, but now he has Caleb Williams. Will that be better or will that be worse? Right? The aforementioned Tyreek Hill, next after DJ Moore. I don't need to explain Tyreek Hill. He's A tier 100%. Some of you would definitely argue that he would potentially still be S tier despite it all. Nico Collins, transcendent year last year. I already spoke about Devontae. Drake London. I'll let you speak about Drake London, Sam.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, of all the people on this list, other than the 2 rookies, he has the least amount of production. But he was a highly touted prospect. He's still very young. I think he's 21 or 22 years old. Mm-hmm. He had Desmond Ridder thrown to him last year, and was probably one of the worst passing offenses in the league. It had to be up there. And obviously they brought in Kirk Cousins. They're making all these all-in moves. I think the Falcons know that they've got a good team this year, and I don't think they would think they have a chance of competing if they didn't have a solid wide receiver 1. And I just think we're going to see Cousins provide enough volume to London to be in that top 10 conversation, honestly, by next year.
I agree. I think that there's really good upside for him. This year is going to be telling of how he's ultimately going to pan out, probably career-wise. if Kirk Cousins is healthy all year.
It's definitely
The
do or
last,
die.
what's that?
It's definitely do or die for Drake London. If he doesn't
Yeah,
perform
yeah,
this year, he's not even in the top 40 next year.
yeah. And I think the remainder four are a little self-explanatory. Just a quick blurb on each of them to keep it simple. Michael Pittman, I'm not getting into the details. He's performed pretty much every year with mediocre quarterback play around him. Malik Neighbors, another highly touted rookie. You'll notice we put him on the back end of the A tier compared to Marvin Harrison because Marvin Harrison definitely has more upside right now. And Neighbors has Daniel Jones as his quarterback. Poor guy.
I'm
Uh,
praying for him. But
and then you have Jalen Waddle, who really, I don't think he was 100% healthy last year, if I remember right, but he never looked good last year. But the year before, he was a stud. I expect him to rebound if he's 100%. I like Waddle. There's a lot of talent there. And then you have Olave, who's another one with a ton of talent. He's clear cut wide receiver one. He's just stuck in a situation where the QB play isn't great, right? But what you need to understand is that this is Dynasty. But will he potentially be the best receiver for you this year? Maybe he'll have a really good year. But Derek Carr is not always going to be there. They'll fix that quarterback position eventually, and Olave is young.
no, and bless the Saints fans. It sounds like they think it might be Spencer Rattler. If you're a fan of college football, good luck. I
Hey,
don't think
that's
that's
just
going to
because
be
it's
an
preseason,
improvement.
man. People are crazy.
He's looked good, but I, Olave is the guy I'm most nervous about in that list.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but he's a talent,
He's talented, but yeah,
and we could use the same argument that neighbors shouldn't be there.
we could. I
Yeah, so
think
you just got to be like, we got to remember, guys, we're coming from this perspective of like upside value in dynasty as like time goes on, and some of these receivers are going to end up running into situations where things just are not optimal, no matter how you spin it throughout their entire career. But they have that upside that comes alongside their talent. JSN, we got, and now we're moving on to the B tier here. I'm just loading them in here for what we got. Debo, and then where is Higgins? Higgins. So this is the order we got for B tier. All right. We're definitely down another level here. Some of these players do have upside. We're just in a situation where we need to see more. DK Metcalf, obviously a little bit older. He's sitting on the Seahawks team where, I'll be candid, I don't think Geno Smith is the best quarterback. He's an average quarterback. But he's clear cut wide receiver one on that team. But you'll notice his counterpart, JSN, is sitting 4 stages just behind him right there because JSN really has a lot of upside. And I wouldn't be surprised this year if he starts to eat into some of DK's play if things go the right way for him. They could be a 1A, 1B situation. Time will tell. I'll let you speak to your wonderful Zay Flowers.
yeah. Well, I think this is an interesting tier because this is kind of the part in the draft where some of the guys here, like DK, Cup, Deontay Johnson, Debo, T. Higgins, they probably don't ever in their career increase to like an A tier receiver. They could remain a B tier guy for the remainder of their careers. Uh, but the guys that I think have potential to increase in value, who are also the riskiest picks here, are
Yep.
Zay, JSN, and George Pickens. I really like all three. I'm happy with all of them. In order, though, I prefer to take like Zay Flower and George Pickens just because they're both the wide receiver ones in their offense right
Mhm.
now. Um, Zay is obviously tied to a better quarterback and a better offense in general, so I think he has the edge there. He
Mhm.
obviously had a very good rookie season that kind of went under the radar. And Pickens, the one guy I'll call out here too, he seems to have a good connection with Justin Fields. As much as I don't think Kyle or I think Fields is a great NFL QB, but he does like to force feed his wide receiver one, and that's what led to DJ Moore finishing as wide receiver 6 last year.
Mhm.
And Pickens is kind of a similar build, so I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for him.
Well, you're also assuming Justin Fields is going to be the starter.
I am. Uh,
Mhm.
my optimism for Pickens plummets a little bit if it's Russell Wilson, but I just don't think that. Like I think the Steelers will take the chance on Fields' upside versus the decaying floor of Russell Wilson at some point this season.
Yeah, it could happen some point this season. I don't think it's going to be the beginning of the year. I'll be very surprised if Fields is a starter week one.
Yeah, so that's why Flowers I think is the clear cut top guy, here. But
Yeah.
Pickens asterisk if Field starts moves up my B tier rankings a little bit.
Okay. To round out the B tier, just real quick, Cup is self-explanatory. If he's healthy, he's going to be a go. Some might argue that he could be A tier, but he's another one who's aging. He's older, I believe, off the top of my head, he's 31 now. He's hitting that age where there's that receiver cliff. So you just got to be cautious. This is a dynasty league. Sure, he may perform for you this year, maybe next year, but after that, it starts to get a little bit iffy as far as wide receiver performance goes. Deontay Johnson, Debo, T. Higgins, self-explanatory. I think all three of them belong right where they are. Deontay's got a nice upside as a wide receiver one. Debo, he's a wide receiver two. He's a gadget receiver. I think he's a solid performer. As we discussed, Ayuk is staying there now. That obviously lowers his value as well. And then T. Higgins, if he does what he's capable of with Joe Burrow back, he should rebound nicely as a solid wide receiver too. Now let's start filling in the C tier. You'll notice as we go down these tiers, you're going to start to get some aging vets. And a big reason for this is, if not that they can't perform, as we said, like I expect Davante Adams, for example, here to have a pretty good year this year, but he's older. And that's where you got to start looking at as far as like some of these tier values and how they come into play. Mike Evans is another example. He's older too. Monster year last year. He'll probably have a monster year this year. But this is Dynasty, and you need to start preparing yourself for some longevity when it comes down to things. Keenan Allen. Where's our boy Jaden Reed?
Yeah,
Odunze.
and some of these guys in like the C tier, if you put them in like a trade calculator, like Odunze is going to be double the value of like Keenan Allen in a trade calculator at this point. But it's also weighing your chances of winning. Like I think sometimes with Dynasty we get away from that a little bit. It's easy to get caught up in like, oh, he's a young rookie, he has so much potential. I'm taking him, and then we have a team of 6, 7 rookies. I'm certainly guilty of doing this sometimes as well, and then we don't put up points for a year or two, which is a difficult place to be in when you're trying to win your league and there's money on the line. So
Is it, Sam?
uh, only for the one league where I'll be a rebuilder forever, but other leagues, not so
So,
much.
so C tier, as mentioned, you're going to see some aging vets. We have Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper. These are all guys that have obviously been in the league, and we know they have had really good careers. It's a big piece. This isn't a knock on their careers. They're absolute studs. Odds are all of them would perform for you this year. I'm not going to deny it. However, it's the years after that we are emphasizing. And I keep saying this because I want to nail this point home. Like, in a Dynasty League, you have to think present and future tense versus just this year. And it's an adjustment. If you've never done Dynasty, it's a whole different approach in your draft. Like, you have to think about these things when you're making your picks. And the ADP might not always be the way to go, because ADP might be telling you to take Mike Evans in round 2 or round 3 based off of performance. But in reality, like, you're reaching it on an older vet when you could get someone young, for example, like Xavier Worthy, who's also on that list, who's looking like a really solid potential grab on the field with Patrick Mahomes later in the draft. So, like, you got to think about value when you're approaching these things. We like everybody that's in C tier. It's not that we dislike any of them. We think they're obviously all draftable. They're in the top 40 as far as we're concerned on this list. Nothing here really stands out too crazy. For me, maybe Rashee Rice, jury's out whether or not how much he's going to play. We all know he's got charges on him. Jameson Williams, a guy that was drafted really high with highest expectations, and then he was an idiot, decided to gamble. I don't know what it is with people. Anyway, he was hurt, then he gambled, so he hasn't played a full season yet, but we know he was really talented in college. It's kind of like a put up or shut up season for him. Odunze, who we know Sam was talking really big about him the other day, right now he's wide receiver 3 on his team. Will he be wide receiver 2 by the end of the season? We don't know. That's why he's in the C tier. That's why these rookies, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, they're all in the C tier because there is potential right now, but they're not going to outperform the people that are in the S, A, and B tier right now. So it's a mix of aging vets and then potential long-term grabs that you might not see the performance that you're looking for right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I think the two players are probably the best mix of production now and value down the road, at least for this year. I think Odunze will be in this conversation next year.
Mm-hmm.
Would be Thomas and Worthy. Both have potential to be the wide receiver one and pretty good offenses by the end of this year. I don't think either of them start out as the wide receiver one, but the Chiefs have missed a deep threat for a long time. Hollywood Brown is going to be missing some time to start the season, and that could
Mm-hmm.
be enough to establish Worthy as that go-to deep guy. And Thomas, same thing. They brought in Gabe Davis, but he's a kind of a one-trick pony, and I think Kirk is that underneath guy, and Thomas could be that kind of alpha wide receiver in the Jaguars offense there.
Yeah, I agree with that take. There's upside in this tier is really the thing I want to hammer home. So you might see C and be like, oh, C tier. Well, C's are degrees. These people will pass. They will do something for you, and they will definitely get you some points when it comes down to it. They're just going to be a little bit more on the iffier end, long term and potentially this season. We wanted to add in. You'll notice there's some players here that are not in, and we have an honorable mentions tier. And the reason we did this is because there are definitely some receivers that we obviously didn't put in those top 4 tiers that are possibly going to have a decent season. We don't know. The jury's out. All right. And you can see the list that we have there. We have Terry McLaurin. He's in a situation where he's got a rookie quarterback. I like Jaden Daniels. I think that there's nice upside here. Hopefully he'll get some stability. He's still in his mid to late 20s, so it's not like he's old. I expect him to have a decent year this year. Stephon Diggs, really just couldn't tell you what he's going to be this year. That Texas backfield is super crowded. That whole offense is crowded. I know CJ Stroud is going to be airing it out, but the jury's going to be out on where he fits. Ridley, I think he's self-explanatory. So is Christian Kirk. These are people with high upside on their teams right now. Lad McConkey and Keon Coleman, 2 rookies with really good upside. They could be staples on their teams when it comes down to it. Coleman obviously is being argued to be wide receiver 1 or 2 on his team right now. He just hasn't looked the best in preseason so far. So yeah, there's other ones real quick, and then I'll obviously let Sam chime in here. Down along the list here that we didn't touch that have potential. Don't rule them out just because they're not listed. Like Mike Williams, for example, he's been injured. He's 29. We know he can play, but we don't know what he's going to look like, and he's on a new team. So
Yeah.
just a little bit of a small example here. Every single receiver here has some sort of potential. They will all be drafted. All right, but we wanted to give you guys certain levels of like talent and what you can expect based off of what you're drafting and when. So obviously the A tier are going to give you more points most likely than the B tier players.
Yeah, and the guy I just want to call out for honorable mentions, I think is Calvin Ridley. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 17,
Yep.
which is, you wouldn't think that with where he's being drafted. In Superflex startups, he's being drafted in like the end of the 9th, early 10th. 1 QB, I'm guessing he's probably 6th, 7th round type of area there. But he's the lowest ADP of all the guys on this list that could put up wide receiver 1 numbers. So I think you can get like a bargain on him. And even though he's 29, he had those 2 years where he didn't play. So he doesn't have the wear and tear of some of the other 29-year-old wide receivers. So again, I like all those guys in that list. I think, I'm happy with any of these top 45 guys that we listed out here. But I think there is good value in any of these tiers depending on how you're trying to construct your team.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap that up here, guys. We'd love to know what you thought about this tier list. A little bit of a different take based off of what we've been doing in some of our other videos, which we will be finishing. We think the tier list is a nice way to separate people out, not based off of ADP, but based off of like potential talent, because some of these ADPs are flip-flopping between the different tiers, as you can see. Right. So just keep that in mind when you're going to your draft. One of the things we've been saying in the other videos is ADP is not the end all be all. All right. So make sure you're picking people that are going to give you your value and that you think are going to build your team in the direction that you want to go when you're picking out your dynasty team. All right. And as always, please like and subscribe. We appreciate you guys checking out this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.